9 a.m. We will go ahead and get started.
Recording in progress.
A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located in the back on the wall, and there is also an automatic external defibrillator on the back wall. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good morning to everyone. We will begin with the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Breen Boyle. Here. Commissioner Mike Boyle.
He's still having trouble connecting audio-wise, but he's there.
Okay, we'll count him as present. Commissioner Kavanaugh is absent at the moment. Commissioner Friend. Here. Commissioner Morgan. Here. Commissioner Rogers. Here. Madam Chair.
Present. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, June 15, 2021. And item B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, June 29, 2021 as the date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property, the tax rolls, or increased value on property. Is there a motion to approve A and B?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Morgan, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
And for those at home, we are doing a voice vote this morning. So Commissioner Breen Boyle.
Yes.
Commissioner Mike Boyle. I think he must be having connectivity issues still. Commissioner Kavanaugh is absent. Commissioner Friend.
Here.
Or yes or no?
Oh, sorry. I wasn't paying attention.
Just the minutes and the
yes.
setting a date.
Okay. Commissioner Morgan.
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Item C, citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we have 2 resolutions. Is there a motion to approve D and E and adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Commissioner Marine Boyle.
Yes.
Commissioner Mike Boyle.
No, still haven't.
Okay. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Commissioner Friend.
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Rogers.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
We will move to the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Marine Boyle.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Boyle.
Nope, still having trouble.
All righty. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Here.
Commissioner Friend.
Here.
Commissioner Morgan.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers. Madam Chair.
Present. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, June 15, 2021. Please note the minutes for the pre-board meeting of Monday, June 14, 2021 are available on the internet. And item B, approval of the claim submitted for payment process through Tuesday, June 22, 2021. Is there a motion to approve A and B?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Morgan, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Commissioner Marine Boyle.
Yes.
Commissioner Mike Boyle. Okay. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Commissioner Friend.
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
We are going to change the order here. We do have a special guest with us this morning. Our Chief Executive Officer from our National Association of Counties, Mr. Matt Chase. He's going to give us a presentation on the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. And we'll have him present, and then we'll take a few minutes for any questions or comments after his presentation. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Matt. Good morning and welcome to the Douglas County Board of Commissioners meeting.
Good morning, Madam Chair. It is great to see everyone. I want to start by just thanking you personally for your great leadership over the last couple of years with the National Association of Counties, including your time as president. We were in Douglas County in December 2019 before the pandemic, and that was one of my last trips before the pandemic, and just wanted to thank you and your fellow commissioners in the overall county just for your support. I see next to you is Commissioner Rogers, also a past president, and we started at NACO together. So it's great to see everybody. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to move pretty quickly so that we can hopefully have time for questions and answers. But today I've been asked to focus specifically on the Treasury program for state and local government within the American Rescue Plan. And there are many, many other pieces to the American Rescue Plan, which is now the law of the land. And there's many different opportunities for the county, both as a government, but also your community to tap into different funding resources. And again, the reason for this whole program, particularly the $65 billion in direct federal aid for counties, is to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, both the public health crisis that has taken over 600,000 lives, but also the economic devastation that has played out. What we are seeing from a county lens, of course, is also the behavioral health issues that have been heightened during the pandemic and as we come out of the pandemic. So the intent of this program, as Congress designed it and we worked with them, was to create broad flexibility. It wasn't unlimited flexibility because it really was money tied to the COVID-19 pandemic. But Congress did intend for broad use of funds. There are a couple of key limitations that we really need to be aware of, and I'll get into them throughout my presentation. But again, the nexus of this money, the important question that you need to keep asking yourself is the activity that we want to invest in tied to the COVID-19 pandemic, both from a public health perspective, a broader behavioral health perspective, and the negative economic consequences of the pandemic. So there's a great amount of focus on public health, on economic recovery, including those people and populations within the community most severely harmed. And there is a focus on trying to build back better, particularly with broadband, water, and sewer, and that includes stormwater. And then also allowing state and local governments to make sure that we keep our workforce. One of the great lessons from the 2008 recession was that state and local governments were a real drag on the economic recovery after the 2008 recession, and Congress wanted to make sure that that didn't happen again. You will also see highlighted here the importance of calculating your lost revenue, particularly for counties that are really reliant on property tax, and that really lags the economy by years and months. There is an opportunity here to calculate your potential lost revenue of potential growth that you could have had during the pandemic. I also want to highlight that we've been working with Treasury throughout the guidance. They've been doing a great job of answering our questions. We have literally submitted over 920 specific questions at this point, and they're working through it. So yes, there's still a lot of unanswered questions, but we're getting answers by the day. Some of the most common questions we're getting is around payroll support. There is a very different nuance with how you can treat your payroll from the Coronavirus Relief Fund, the previous bill under the CARES Act, round one, if you will, versus the American Rescue Plan. There's a lot of questions around what you can do for capital infrastructure improvements, especially those projects beyond water, sewer, and broadband, mainly like courthouse upgrades, jail upgrades, maybe behavioral health facilities. And so there's a lot of questions that we're still working through. There's a lot of questions around, can you just provide direct property tax relief is another example. And then can you use this money as non-federal match for other federal programs? And the answer is generally no. One of the interesting nuances that we were able to get Treasury to agree to is when you deposit this money into your bank accounts, you can put it into interest-bearing accounts, and the interest you earn on that money can be used as general funds. So for activities not traditionally covered by the interim final rule. So you have much greater flexibility when you invest this money in safe but low interest-bearing accounts. You can generate some extra funds that you can use at your local discretion. That is very different than most federal programs. There's some nuances with pensions that I can get into. You can't use this money just to bank it into your rainy day fund. You can't use it for debt service payments. So you got to be careful on a couple of those limitations. And you can use the money to hire auditors and consultants to help you make sure you're complying with the rules. So these are just some general questions that we're hearing. I'm going to dig into more of the details. For this program in particular, Treasury has issued an interim final rule, meaning they can still make changes. The comments are due by July 16th, I believe, is the deadline. And you can still make comments about improvements that you want to see in this particular rule. One of the things that Treasury has been doing throughout the pandemic is issuing what they call FAQs. That's basically taking the rule and trying to put it into plain English of may I do this or may I do that? And they're really important. and we are feeding Treasury a lot of questions for clarity. And just last week, they came out with new reporting requirements, particularly for larger urban counties like yours. You'll have to provide your quarterly financial reports, plus develop an annual performance plan. What we've done for our members is created a website where you can go, you can see our resources. We want you to share your stories of how the county is going to invest this money. And we do stress the term invest, not spend. And also, if you have questions that you want Treasury to answer, you can submit them directly to the Treasury Department, or you can send them to us through our website. We're collecting them and then going to Treasury with the most common questions. So again, what is the purpose of this money? It's really, as I said at the beginning, to help build a stronger public health infrastructure. Prior to COVID, as a country, we had cut about 25% of our public health workforce. We had really starved the general public health infrastructure. And as a country, we have been going from crisis to crisis, whether it was Zika or Ebola or the opiate epidemic or the AIDS epidemic. And we have really been siloing public health funding, and we have really starved the broader public health infrastructure. So how do we rebuild it, and how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? And how do we get through the current pandemic? How do we help the public sector make sure we're not just cutting jobs that will be a drag on the economy, let alone cut services at a time of need? And how do we address the overall negative economic impacts? Places like Douglas County fared quite well during the pandemic, probably relatively speaking to other parts of the country, but you probably still had key groups within your local economy really suffer, whether it was retail, hospitality, small businesses, restaurants, et cetera. How do we help those industries get back up on their feet? And then how do we reward those frontline county workers at your discretion for those folks who literally put their lives on the line to go out in the community and serve during the pandemic? And then broadband. There's a major federal focus on getting broadband into underserved communities, and unserved and underserved. So as you read through the guidance, as you read through the interim rule, I really encourage folks to think about the language that U.S. Treasury uses. Some of it is a little unusual from a federal perspective. Usually we're used to seeing words like shall or may. You shall do it or you may do it. And throughout the guidance, they use terms like we encourage or you should. Those typically aren't words used in law, but it's obviously this administration trying to encourage people into certain behaviors. So what's really important from a county perspective, as you really look at what do you have to do, what shall you do, particularly around your audits, your financial reporting, the rest of it is you may. You may do a lot of different things. You may not be able to do everything, particularly like roads and bridges, for example, outside of your lost revenue, but you may do a whole host of things. And so just really think about those key words, shall, may, as what is at your discretion, what do you have to do? I'm not going to dive too deep into this particular slide, but there's a lot of things to decode. I'll send this presentation to Karen Cole so she can share it with the board. But there's some key things that I'm going to dive into that are on this particular slide as we move forward. So let's start with the timing. You should have received your first tranche of money. You'll see your second tranche or your second round of funding no earlier than 1 year from when you got your first payment. So next spring, you should get the second half of money. But do know that you can start to obligate that second round now. So if you have larger projects that exceed your first tranche of money, think of that as just your cash flow, but you can start to obligate that second round, even though you don't have the cash in hand. You'll have to provide quarterly reports, and because you're above 250,000 population and receive more than 5 million, you'll also have to do these quarterly reports plus basically an annual performance plan. Know that you have to obligate the money. You have to sign contracts and obligate the money by December 31st, 2024. but the actual work can be performed to December 31st, 2026. This was really put in place mostly for capital infrastructure improvements, but it does apply to other uses of the funds. So with the reporting, I'm not going to dig too deep into it, but you were a CRF recipient under the CARES Act, so you're pretty familiar with the reporting. They are trying to make it more user-friendly, and so we can work with your professional staff on that as we move forward. Recently, on January 8th, Treasury issued some updates that were important. One, to clarify that yes, you can hire consultants to help you manage and administer the money. Yes, you can establish public jobs programs, either provide direct subsidies to workers or to help them figure out how to get back in the workforce, including working with businesses who want to provide retention bonuses or sign-up bonuses to get people back into the workforce. There's a lot of clarification around the revenue loss language, and I do want to spend a few minutes on that. And again, you can use this money for activities that predated March 3rd, but I would be very careful and I would really look at that language. And there's some tricky language. And then Treasury clarified that there's a specific tracking number called the CFDA number that you need to track all this. If you are going to do infrastructure improvements, you don't have to go to Treasury for a pre-award approval. And there's some guidelines on how you determine if water, sewer, and broadband would be eligible. They also updated the language on broadband to clarify that Treasury understands that if you do focus on broadband, that not every single beneficiary of this service would be underserved or underserved. They understand the economics of these projects, that you do need viable customers to sustain these projects. And so they clarified, what does it mean to be an underserved household or business? And they also updated some of the speed definitions, and they also are allowing middle mile projects. We had quite a few counties who wanted to develop middle mile infrastructure and then partner with the municipality or a different ISP provider to bring the service directly to the residents or to a business. And so there is an allowance for middle mile projects as long as they're tied to somebody else providing that last mile connectivity. I'm not going to, go through each one of these bullets on the next 3 slides, but in general, there's great allowance and broad allowance for anything public health related. There is also significant allowance for behavioral health, and that is a main priority for Douglas County typically. And so just know that Treasury is not trying to differentiate individual cases and was somebody's behavioral health issues caused by COVID or was it pre-existing? They're basically saying there's no way to differentiate, and there's a lot of authority and allowance for behavioral health investments. The one area where we're trying to get clarity around are capital infrastructure improvements related to behavioral health. Much of the guidance is really focused on operations and services. So we're trying to get clarity on the infrastructure side of that. Again, great allowance for negative economic impacts, how you can help workers, families, small businesses. The public sector can rehire. And if you have targeted industries that were severely harmed, there's a lot of different ways that the county can help those industries. There's a major focus on equity and the disparities of how this pandemic impacted different parts of our community. And there's a lot of flexibility in there, including with violence prevention, housing, support services, education, particularly beyond just the K-12 environment, but preschool, post, after school programming, how to get the kids back up to their grade level of learning. And there's a lot of allowance around childhood development as well. So let me just talk about lost revenue and why it's important for the county to go through this exercise, that even if you didn't have a real decline in your revenues, Treasury is allowing you to basically take a annual growth of 4.1% pre-pandemic through the pandemic. And the reason it's important to go through this calculation to see if you would qualify is the difference in lost revenue can be used very flexibly. It can be used for just about any governmental purpose except for backfilling pensions, backfilling rainy day funds or reserve accounts, and paying off debt service payments. You can't also use it for litigation settlements, but you can use it for many other activities, including things like roads and bridges that normally wouldn't be allowed. So basically, they're letting you look at 4 points in time, going back to December 31st, 2020 through the end of December 2023, and you'll be able to benchmark each year what your revenue would have been. And basically what they're doing is saying you can calculate the 3 years prior to the pandemic, what was the average revenue growth of your county versus what did you experience during COVID, or you can take a default 4.1%. For counties with property tax caps in particular, this is a very beneficial provision. It doesn't help everybody, but it's worth going through and trying to calculate. Just trying to go through real quick so we can get to Q&A is for public health, public safety, human service staff, under the CARES Act, the previous bill, you could basically charge almost all of your department's time to the CRF dollars. That, again, that was the CARES Act. Under this program, there's a different test that you have to meet. Did your staff, was a significant portion of their time dedicated to COVID-19 mitigation and response? It does not need to be 100%. You can charge 25% or 50%. You do not have to do it at the individual level. You can do it at the operating unit or the division level. But there is an ability to recapture some of your staff time with the American Rescue Plan Treasury money. You can also provide premium pay going back to the start of the pandemic in January 2020. It's totally discretionary. It is not required, but you can provide up to $13 additional per hour with a max. There's a cap for each individual. I think it's $25,000. And Treasury does basically say that any state, local, or tribal government employee is eligible. But it can't be people who worked from home. It needs to be people who were interacting with the public or who had to report into work. You can also grant it to employers within your community. Again, not required, totally at your discretion. You may have other priorities. I touched on broadband, so I'll leave that for Q&A. And then what is not eligible? You cannot backfill pensions. If you are providing employee payroll support, you can provide your routine, regular pension contributions, but you can't go back and backfill a pension obligation that existed prior. You also can't use it for debt service payments, legal settlements. You can't deposit it into your rainy day fund. There are many limitations on using it as non-federal match for other programs like FEMA, EDA, Medicaid, and other things, but you can match state and other like city investments from Treasury, but you just need to make sure that it benefits residents in your county. And remember, for FEMA, there's a current presidential declaration that actually waives the local cost share through the pandemic, going back to January of 2020 through September 30th of this year. There's some other provisions for the state and territories based about how they can't intentionally cut their taxes and backfill with the Treasury money, but that does not apply to counties. So again, just to wrap up, you can submit your questions to us. You can also tell your story. A really key part of this is making sure we're telling our story and that we're making sure that federal policymakers, the Congress, the administration, the media understand how you're investing your money. And then just a plug for our annual conference in July. We're going to have a lot of sessions with Treasury, but also showcasing what counties are doing. So, Madam Chair, I'll stop there. Hopefully I stayed within time, and welcome any thoughts, comments, or questions.
Thank you, Matt. I also wanted to welcome our link to this meeting, and your presentation was sent to the county boards across the state of Nebraska. And so we have a number of them with us on the call today, and I welcome them as well to our Douglas County Board of Commissioners meeting. And so with that, we do have, just in case someone does want to make a comment from the public or from across the state, we have a 5-minute rule. We will time those questions, and you will be alerted when you have 1 minute left. So again, we welcome any questions or comments from everyone. But with that, we have Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. I just want to say thanks a lot for this very informative briefing. We really appreciate the resources that NACO makes available to us and look forward to the July conference to get more detail. Just one kind of a specific question regarding this premium pay issue that you raised. We discussed this during the pandemic because we had a number of employees in harm's way, particularly our healthcare employees. And we talked about this relative to, for lack of a better term, kind of hazardous duty pay. And I was wondering, as you described the premium pay option, would that be an option for people? It would have to be, going back to the period during the pandemic when we had individuals working for Douglas County who were in direct contact and high risk relative to being infected with COVID.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Thanks for that question, and good to see you. On the premium pay, yes, you can. It is totally discretionary for the county. You can pick the employees in the operating units that you would like to reward. It's totally at your discretion. You can go retroactive back to March 3rd, beyond March 3rd of 2021, meaning you can go back to January 27th of 2020. You can provide up to $13 per hour, but any one individual is capped at $25,000 max. The person or persons would have to have had kind of regular interaction with the public or handling items that would put them at risk. And they really shouldn't have been teleworking. The other thing is there are some nuances in there about putting a focus on lower wage workers. If you get into like management and higher wage, you can do it, but you need to justify in writing why those higher wage workers would be receiving this. So you can do it, you just need to explain why. So it really is designed for like the frontline workers. And then secondly, you can provide it to other employers in your county, but it is not required. And the county would be liable for managing that. So there's some risks associated with it. Hopefully that answers your question. I've lost a little bit of the video. So hopefully that answered the question.
Thanks. Just on that last part, when you said you can apply it to other employees in the county, are you talking about private sector employers and employees?
Yes. Private sector, nonprofit, community-based. Again, the county would be liable for making sure that if you did subgrant it to small businesses or other food kitchen workers, anybody, you would have to justify and be accountable for the money. But you may provide it to other employers in the county. They would have to follow the same rules, and it would have to be for people who were working face-to-face. It couldn't be for folks who were teleworking from their home.
Right. As far as this liability issue goes, that relates to all uses of these funds, not just the
Correct.
ones that we're talking about now, right?
Yeah, it's just the fact of, when you do subgrant it to somebody else,
1 minute.
always remember that you're always responsible for it.
Right. Thanks again.
Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt, thanks for the information. Do you as we've been going through some of this stuff, I noticed you brought up something that concerned me. I mean, the term, I mean, in statutes or ordinance or contracts or directives from any entity, the term may becomes pretty nebulous. And then that type of thing then could become problematic, right? Because you've got a bunch of policymakers who are essentially saying, either A, we got a directive and here's the way we can actually distribute the money, and then we have an easy answer for people who parade up or need information clarified for them. That's not what we're dealing with here. This is, so I guess my question for you is, with that type of flexibility and those type of challenges that could occur, have you gotten much feedback from governmental subdivisions around the country yet about how they're dealing with that, what I would consider to be somewhat problematic language?
Yeah, so going back to great question, and that's literally what we're spending all of our time on, is trying to help county officials like you make sound decisions. Like, the last thing you want is the inspector general come in and try and claw back money. And this is a very unique situation where it's not a traditional grant program. It's a quasi grant program that's really intended as broad fiscal stimulus. And so, and Treasury is not a traditional grant making department. And so it really is a unique situation. I would start with this. Treasury did outline what is clearly eligible. And if I were a county decision maker, I would try and make sure we targeted our investments to those things that were clearly eligible. Anything that's in a gray area, I would use my local funds, and I would try and use the Treasury money to free up as many local dollars that you have discretion on, and put those into the things that are a little, I would call, like, riskier. So, you know, I would really look at what is clear cut. Again, anything with public health, pretty much. A lot of discretion around behavioral health, and a lot of discretion around helping those who have had negative economic impacts. I'm not sure that you're as involved in water and sewer, but there is stormwater. Anything that's clearly eligible under EPA's drinking water fund or state clean water fund or drinking water fund. And then there's some flexibility in broadband. Once you get beyond that, there's definitely a lot of questions. We can try our best to work with Treasury to get you pre-clearance, if you will. And of course, we want that in writing. They've been very reluctant to go down to the project level, but they have been helpful, providing a lot of additional guidance. So, Commissioner Friend, you know, we agree with you. It's a challenge, and we're working our way through it.
Well, the only other thing that I would add then, Matt, is it would occur to me that in order to, and I've made this statement before, but I don't know where I've made it. I make a lot of statements.
I can relate.
What I'm getting at is infrastructure in a 2-year span, when you're dealing with millions and millions of dollars. It would occur to me that infrastructure is a potential injection that could be less problematic than to future budgets than some of that nebulous stuff we were talking about earlier. So if you have problems,
1 minute.
if you have problems that were caused either directly or indirectly by the pandemic, and you can identify infrastructure projects that'll deal with that, 3 years from that point, you're not going to have to deal with budget increases, and you're going to have to go find grants for those and stuff like that. So that was my thought process, but I could be way off the beam.
No, that's good.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm not in the business of telling you guys how to run your county, but clearly it is one-time money, right? So it is clearly one-time money that will not be reoccurring. I see probably far less than a 1% chance that this will ever happen again. Mm-hmm. So I would really think of it as one-time money. There is a conversation with Congress right now about a future infrastructure package. It's incredibly complicated. Getting to the number of votes needed to get it through the House and Senate is really,
Time.
boy, it's like a Rubik's Cube. But there is talk of allowing broader infrastructure use in the future, but that is not the law of the land today.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Any other questions or Commissioner Maureen Boyle?
And I am used to the chair gaveling me with time, so I'm not offended. I'm used to it.
No, I just have a couple things. These are probably part of what would be considered frequently asked questions. You're going to have just buckets of them, I'm sure, coming from everybody. But one is, there are some, of course, conditions that existed well before COVID, and they were only exacerbated by that. For example, something like lead in houses and things like that. Is there a way, like how far down the rabbit hole can we go to say this can be exacerbated by COVID, and will it be therefore, can we address funds or put funds towards that? The second question is kind of related, but in this new post-pandemic world, is social distancing still going to be an issue? So do we need to worry about things like just public buildings in general? Like if you're at the DMV and you're standing right next to somebody, is that a potential place where we could use it? So I think those are the types of things we may want some type of guidance on. And I don't know if you can allude to any of that at this point.
Yes, absolutely. Great question. So I'll put it into two thoughts. One is on the pre-existing conditions like lead in homes in particular, particularly for homes with children. The guidance is very clear that the county can invest in remediation activities to get lead out of the home, knowing that people were spending more time in these households and were more exposed to things like lead. So that one in particular is called out in the interim rule as clearly being eligible. One of the questions that we have for Treasury is, would that also apply to homes with elderly who are also homebound? They are very specific about homes with children and saying including children. So we're getting clarification that it doesn't have to be limited only to those households with kids, particularly K through 12. But that is clearly eligible. Again, behavioral health, broad-based, there's a lot of flexibility where you do not have to determine, was this individual having issues, whether it's substance abuse or mental health or domestic violence before COVID, or did COVID exacerbate it? You don't have to make that determination. So they're basically saying, we recognize there's going to be a lot of behavioral health issues. And then your other question, can you just remind me, you made a great point. Facilities. Mm-hmm. So there is clear allowance in the interim rule for particularly air filtration systems if you need to upgrade like courthouses or jails or other facilities that are essential during things like a pandemic where we need better HVAC systems or air filtration systems. That's a clearly an eligible use. When you get into things like social distancing, particularly in like jails or those types of settings, or maybe like jury trials is one that we're talking to Treasury about, how jury trials basically just stopped during the pandemic and caused a backload in the criminal justice system. Would those be allowed? In general, yes, that anything you can do to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 is allowable. If you're talking new construction, where you want a brand new jail or a brand new behavioral health center, those are more questionable, and we're trying to get more guidance from Treasury right now.
I see. My example was like the DMV where customers are standing in line close. I mean, those types of buildings could be renovated. It sounds like maybe that's the gray area, but not, of course, not rebuilding anything. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think existing facilities, if you need to make, to make upgrades to existing facilities, and you can clearly show that it's part of a COVID-19 mitigation strategy. And remember, we still have these variants. Yep. That's
1
eligible.
minute.
If you're talking about building a new facility, we are definitely much more cautious about that.
All right. Very good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just lastly, just keep remembering, how do you tie it back to COVID, particularly when you're talking facilities? How do I tie it back to COVID mitigation and response?
Thanks. Great.
Thank you. With that, Karen, there's some folks that put some comments or questions in the chat. Can we just run through those real quick? So the presentation, again, it will be sent to Karen Cole from our office, and we can send that to you as well. We can actually send it, might be easier if we just send it to our state NACO office and they can send it out to everyone. And then the recording, yes, this is recorded. And so one of the questions I had even prior to this was, could we cut this section of the recording and send it? And we'll have to take a look at that one. But it is on our webpage after we are done for the day. And so you're more than welcome to access it through that. Any other questions or comments from anyone? We have one from the public.
And lastly, Madam Chair, real quick, NACO has a number of resources, including a checklist document. If I can find it today, I'll post it in the chat, but it goes through section by section, and many of the questions that were asked today, we actually have some documentation that I think will help you. So if I can find it on our website, I will post it in the chat.
And Larry, I'm sorry, right before you go, Joe Lorenz, our Chief Financial Officer, has had his hand up and I forgot. So Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Hey, Matt, it's Joe Lorenz, Douglas County Finance Director. I'm trying to get a better understanding of census tract. You know, I read a bit about it, and I know what areas within Douglas County qualify under the census tract. But within the various county departments, we have programs like for alternative to detention for youth, or community corrections programs, or certain initiatives coming out of the health department that the census tract, identified census tract areas are the primary beneficiaries of. Is it my understanding, or what do you think? Do you think that the cost of those programs would be eligible for reimbursement under the ARPA plan?
Yeah, Joe, great question. In the link that I just posted, there is a section under number 2, address negative economic impacts. There is a whole section on the census tract. This also goes back to what I was saying earlier about shall, may, and where the White House is trying to encourage certain behaviors. There is broad use of funds in qualified census tracts. There also, you do not have to limit it to those qualified census tracts. You can also find other households, businesses, and populations that have been disproportionately impacted in the broader county. But in those qualified census tracts, you have broad authority to invest in homelessness, housing affordability, anything with housing, counseling, a lot of different housing, economic, or educational disparities, early childhood learning, high poverty programming, child care support. There's some activities in there, particularly in the human service area, where you have broad authority to make investments. We can follow up with you and dig into it in more detail if needed.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Larry, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. I guess these are supposed to be all in the form of questions, but I'll start off with how is this actually
Mr. Storr, could you
constitutional?
identify yourself for the record, please?
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. In terms of how is this constitutional, how is this a part of the Republican form of government, whereas there's responsibilities by the federal government? What's not expressed in the Constitution is left to the states. But here we have an overall national body giving us instructions as to what we do because of COVID, because of the pandemic. Many of the items on here, are they actually because of the pandemic, or because you want to expand your budgets. What do you do when the grants run out? Who are you going to ask for more money to keep these things going? Why is physical plant and things like that a result of COVID? That is a budget item that you should either budget for or deny the expenses because you can't afford it. How does this not going to be unconstitutional when he says you cannot apply this to people that work from home? How many employers have people working from home? I can tell you there's a lot of people in my neighborhood, on my street, that are employed by somebody, but they work at home. My daughter does. She works extra shifts. She can't get COVID because she works from home. How is that constitutional? You need to clear up these things. But first of all, this is not the way it's supposed to go. It doesn't come from high down, it comes from down up. From the city to the county to the state. This should be a state and a local issue. You should define the rules, not somebody in a national association that is trying to squeeze the words out of the Treasury Department. The words shall or may apply in a lot of places, including the U.S. Constitution. How is this not a magician's hat trick or a sleight of hand to distract our attention, or your attention maybe, while things are slipped under the rug and brought in through the back door? A lot of those items listed have nothing to do with because of COVID, have nothing to do with anything other than budgets and people trying to, oh, I'm going to grab some federal money so we can put a new physical plant in. That is not related to COVID. That's related to the existing physical plan, the existing budget, and not because of COVID. So slow down and say no to some of these people. Don't take your orders and your ideas from the best practices from on high, things such as the National Association of Counties. You're supposed to listen to us, not to them. That's the idea of a Republican form of government, which is promised to us in the Constitution. Thank you.
I do want to clarify that these are not the National Association of Counties rules. We have our CEO from the National Association of Counties who is presenting what the Treasury, the United States Treasury guidelines are with this money that has been given to local governments. With that, any other questions or comments? All right. Again, I want to thank Matt Chase for being with us. I know some of us, as we read through this stuff, it's clear as mud, and so it's nice to hear from Matt and the explanations, and then being able to really dig in and talk about these things. And again, the biggest takeaway for me with this, in terms of being able to really strategically plan, is the timing this time. That we have more time to really look at what we want to contribute these dollars to when it comes to our county operations and issues. And so again, I thank Matt Chase. I thank all of the county boards from across the state that are on with us today. And you all have a good rest of your day. And if you have any questions, like Matt said, don't hesitate to call or email the National Association of Counties and look at their website and look at the resources that they have put together from the beginning of the pandemic. They're phenomenal. And so, again, thank you all very much for being with us today.
Thank you,
Matt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of NACO, thank you. And I just want to stress, we fought to make sure that this money went directly from the federal government to the local level so that you could make decisions based on your local conditions. That yes, there are federal rules and guidelines. Nothing is free in life, and we need public accountability and transparency. That's something we actually pushed for, is to make sure that this money would be accountable. But we also wanted to allow you as local policymakers to make decisions based on your local community and not have the federal or state government really put you in a box. Yes, there are guidelines, but you do still have a lot of flexibility, and it does need to tied to COVID. But with that, I really want to thank you all for your leadership. We know it's been a grueling 18 months, and want to just thank you all for your public service.
Thank you again, Matt, and thank you everyone else across Nebraska for being with us. All right. With that, we will go back to our consent agenda. We have items A through K. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Any questions or motion by Commissioner Morgan, second by Commissioner Rogers? Is there Commissioner Kavanaugh? Oh, sorry.
These questions came up yesterday when we discussed this, and under G, this is the Health Department's category 3, there was just a clarification question on the amendment from Region 6 Behavioral Healthcare regarding an extension through December 31st, 2021, and a fund increase from $95,570.31 to $414,193.34. And the question was, this is a fourfold increase. First of all, what is this for, and why does it represent a fourfold increase?
So good morning, Commissioner Adi Poor, Douglas County Health Department. Number 3 is in regards to behavioral health. That's our tobacco-free program that we have had with Region 6 for many, many years. Why they are extending it until December, we are not quite sure, but we think they probably are adjusting their year that they give out their awards. You know, sometimes in the beginning, they only give us a small chunk because they have not received the federal funding yet. And then once they receive it, then they extend it further. So that's what happened here.
Thank you, Doctor. At the beginning of your remarks, I was unable to hear exactly what the program was for.
So tobacco-free Nebraska, we have a program where we really encourage, especially youth, not to start smoking or vaping at this time.
And the fourfold increase matches a time that the program is being extended 4 times?
Correct. So the work plan is adjusted accordingly.
Thank you. And again, an informational question on item K that we touched on yesterday, which is a claim pursuant to the Nebraska Political Subdivisions Tort Claim Act for it looks like a lawsuit claiming $10 million. And I think that we got some clarification on that yesterday. If we could just, for the viewing public, put that in the record.
This is Patrick, Bloomingdale County Administrator. So this is just a situation where the claimant has filed a claim against everybody that they can think of. The county has no involvement in this claim whatsoever, but I think it's just a shotgun approach by the claimant.
So there's no liability for Douglas County?
No, not as far as we're concerned, no.
Thank you.
If I may add, Dan Esch, Douglas County Clerk, if people may be wondering, well, why is it even on the agenda then? Well, it's just for the clerk's office, anytime we get a tort claim, if Douglas County is named, even if it appears it's not, really relevant to us, it's just procedure. If we're named, regardless if we think we're involved or not, we forward it to the risk manager.
Appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Any other questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I did say it backwards. The motion was made by Commissioner Morgan and seconded by Commissioner Rogers. All right, go ahead and roll call.
Commissioner Maureen Boyle.
Yes.
Commissioner Mike Boyle.
He's there,
He
but
is,
he's still having trouble with his audio.
Okay. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Right, we will move on to the recognitions and proclamations. We have two. The first one is Recognition Day of the 10th anniversary of Douglas County, Nebraska's Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, also known as JDI, and it reaffirms the commitment to the same, and this is brought to us by Commissioner Chris Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll read the resolution and ask for motion and ask the guest here if they want to say anything with it. It reads, whereas Douglas County Youth Center is responsible for ensuring the needs of youth are met when placed for the purpose of detention, and whereas the Douglas County Board sought efforts to safely reduce the number of youth housed at the Douglas County Youth Center through detention alternative initiatives, and whereas on February 16, 2011, Douglas County, Nebraska was officially recognized as a Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, JDAI site by the Annie Casey Foundation, and whereas on June 23, 2011, JDI, a national initiative launched as a collaborative effort of the juvenile justice stakeholders in Douglas County. This collaborative has worked to build a better and more equitable youth justice system, and whereas JDI relies on this expertise and support from Douglas County personnel, judges, probation staff, defense attorneys, prosecutors, law enforcement, policymakers, researchers, educators, community members, and others dedicated to improving the lives of young people and strengthening communities across our state. And whereas JDI was designed to support the vision that all youth involved in the juvenile justice system have opportunities to develop into healthy, productive adults. After decades of innovation and replication, JDI is one of the nation's most effective, influential, and widespread juvenile justice system reform initiatives. And whereas JDI increases the likelihood of youth becoming productive citizens while balancing public safety and often leading to cost savings. And whereas through the work of all stakeholders in Douglas County and with the assistance of the JDI Collaborative, the average daily population in DCYC has been reduced by nearly 50%. And whereas recognizing also that by design, reform in JDI sites has expanded beyond juvenile detention to the front end of the system. And whereas Douglas County continues to be a strong supporter of the initiative and affirms its ongoing commitment to effectively reduce the number of youth inappropriately housed at DCYC and to build a system that is just, developmentally appropriate, and one that holds youth accountable while being inclusive. Now therefore be resolved by the Board of County Commissioners in Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby recognizes June 23rd, 2021 as the recognition day of the 10th anniversary of the Douglas County, Nebraska's Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative and reaffirms its commitment to the same. And I would move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan.
And Madam Chair, if I can, I will introduce Ms. Michelle Salter. She'll introduce her guest there with her. Just to note, from what's stated in the purpose, when we originally came, Douglas County was agreed upon to be the first JDI site in the state. I think we have 3 now with Sarpy, Oto, and Lancaster coming on. And the goal is to spread it throughout the state with that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Salter, and she'll introduce others.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. With me today, I have Darcy Poland. She is the Chief Deputy of District 4J Probation, which is all of Douglas County, and Heather Briggs. Heather is the intake coordinator for probation. We just wanted to say thank you for this resolution and tell you how much we love what we do. We're excited to continue to ensure the safety of this community while building a system that we know is fair and just for all of our children. So we just wanted to thank you for the opportunity.
And you guys want to say anything?
No, just
No.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments from board members? All right, with that, roll call.
Commissioner Maureen Boyle? Yes. Commissioner Mike Boyle? So I know I'm just trying to give him a chance in case he has the issues corrected. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Next, we have a resolution that will be presented by our county attorney, Mr. Don Klein. Good morning, everyone. This recognizes the Honorable Tressa M. Alia, did I say it right?
That's right.
for her service to Douglas County and her historic appointment to the Douglas County District Court. Congratulations, and Don?
Good morning, Don Klein, Douglas County Attorney. Just a few comments before I read the resolution. I mentioned this the other day at the swearing. There's a little bit of history here that I'd like to relate to the board. It's a little bit of a parallel. In 1971, there was a deputy county attorney who worked in the county attorney's office who was appointed to the bench in the municipal court of Douglas County by Governor J.J. Exon. This person was a wonderful person, a great lawyer, integrity, was a tremendous person. That person was Elizabeth Pittman, who was the first female judge appointed in the state of Nebraska and the first African-American judge appointed in the state of Nebraska. So now we go 50 years, okay? It's amazing, 1971 to 2021. In that time, Edna Atkins was appointed as a female African-American to the county court bench during that time period, but in those 50 years, there had never been an appointment made to the district bench for a female of African-American descent. And so we're here this week, we're celebrating Tressa's great achievement. She was appointed because she is also a wonderful person, a great lawyer who's dedicated her life to public service. She's a person of integrity, and she was appointed by Governor Ricketts based on all those things in the content of her character, which is unbelievable. She's just an unbelievable person, and she's going to be a great judge. And the people who are winners here on this are the people of the state of Nebraska and the people of Douglas County, because she is going to be a great judge for the people. And so there's been a resolution prepared, and if I could read that, okay. The Board of Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, resolved, whereas Tressa M. Aliath started her legal career as a deputy Douglas County attorney in April of 1998, and whereas during her 23 years with the Douglas County Attorney's Office, Ms. Aliath has handled hundreds of cases while working in the criminal, domestic violence, and civil divisions of the office, served on numerous boards and committees, and displayed unwavering dedication to serving the citizens of Douglas County. And whereas on April 23, 2021, Ms. Aliath was appointed the first female African-American district court judge in the history of the state of Nebraska, and whereas now Judge Aliath formally assumed the district court bench on June 18, 2021, now therefore be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that the county thanks Tressa M. Aliath for her dedicated service to the citizens of Douglas County and congratulates her on the historic achievement of becoming the first female African-American district court judge in Nebraska. Dated this 22nd day of June, 2021, signed by Mary Ann Borgeson, Chair, Douglas County Board of Commissioners. We love Tressa. We're going to miss her, but we're very proud of her, and we know she's going to be a great judge. So congratulations, Tressa.
Motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. And Commissioner Rogers, do you want to make a comment?
Well, I snuck in and out of the ceremony on Friday, and I know they was using the term, started from the bottom. Now we're here. I guess I'm one of the few people up here that can say, I literally saw you when you were at the bottom when we were on campus at Creighton. So it's, I just can't. There's a lot of joy, but just a lot of also awestruck not to know you walking around with the first black judge, female judge here in the county. So personally, on behalf of all of us that were there and all your friends, I wish you the best. There was no doubt that it was destined, because if anybody was about the business and studiousness, it was you while you were there on campus. So I wish you well in your endeavor.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers.
Anyone else? I want to add my congratulations to you. You're awestruck by what we're watching and seeing in front of us, and just congratulations. I know you'll do a fantastic job. I've heard a lot about your integrity and the way you go about doing your business. And it's, you have a very high bar, so we appreciate that. And again, congratulations on the appointment. I do want to add one other thing. Commissioner Mike Boyle is having trouble with his audio, and so he wanted to make sure you knew that he would definitely vote yes for this resolution. So go ahead and comments.
Just thank you all for this. It's been just a whirlwind of being in the office. I started when I was in law school and was in the county attorney's office, knew that the public service was where I wanted to be over corporate America, and it has been just humbling to just serve the citizens of Douglas County. So thank you for this recognition. I truly appreciate it.
Well, again, thank you for putting yourself out there for it. All right, with that, roll call.
Commissioner Marine Boyle.
Absolutely, yes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Commissioner Friend.
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers. Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay.
Thank you all. Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move to citizen comments. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. This might be the last in a series of things regarding the Open Meetings Act. I have a couple of other experiences since my last chance here to talk about. The rules under the Open Meetings Act, which is supposed to be for the citizens to be able to address their government at open meetings without a whole lot of restrictions, particularly those which are maybe unreasonable. What is reasonable versus unreasonable? Every one of the local bodies, including from the state down to the Learning Community Council, has different rules. They vary. They seem to be their own rules, and sometimes they change on the spur of the moment. One of the first rules that can be played with is the sound systems. I have no problem in the morning here in this body hearing people. For some reason in the afternoon you cannot hear people. You're not wearing masks. We can understand you. Last night at the Omaha Public School Board meeting, everybody had to have the mask. You couldn't understand them. The sound system is poor. They left the doors to the operating machinery room open so you couldn't hear them. And there were very few citizens that were not speaking other than myself. Maybe that's one of the reasons. Last week at the Learning Community Council, once again, sound system, very poor. They had 3 or 4 microphones sitting on there, and the citizens had trouble deciding which one was operating. So they used their time up trying to hear somebody tell them which microphone to pick up. And you still couldn't hear them. That's ways to restrict citizen input. But the other things are, at the Learning Community Council meeting, for example, they were allowed to let people make any kind of noise or statements while people like me were talking that they wanted to, without being called out of order and without calling on a sheriff's deputy at taxpayer expense to escort them out. Now, the topic was basically the taxpayer dollars being spent for early childhood education. The citizens were turned out en masse, and they were very divided because a lot of us think that that is critical race theory stuff going on. Nobody talks about it except the people, unfortunately, largely of the black community. Most of them were in favor of spending the money or whatever but maybe they didn't understand what early childhood education and CRT is. CRT, critical race training, is another Marxist tactic. There were people with a Marxist shirt, Marxist hat, and a Revolutionary Action Party sitting in that meeting just like they have sat here. They tried to sit on the floor so they didn't get on the cameras all the time. They're trying to be conspicuous, but they weren't inconspicuously when they got up and interrupted somebody that was talking. It wasn't just me. There was another citizen that wants the debate to be two-way, not one-way. When it's one way from the big boy microphones to the other side, it's divisive. All lives matter, regardless of your color. To Black Lives Matters, check it out. They are a Marxist, admittedly Marxist organization. And to a Marxist,
1 minute, 40 seconds, actually.
nobody's life matters. It's their political system that matters. Whether you're white, green, pink, purple, they will kill you to get their purpose achieved, which is the overthrow of this government. It needs to be discussed openly. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the board about an item not on the agenda? With that, we will move to our presentation by Dr. Adi Poor on our COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccination plan. Good morning, Dr. Poor.
Good morning, Board. Adi Poor, Douglas County Health Department. It's going to be a very short report, but I know some of you are more interested in numbers. So up to now, we have 72,106 total cases since the beginning of the pandemic. And we have tested 353,651 people. So that means more than a half of Douglas County residents have been tested. Some of them multiple times. We have now provided more than 1 million tests in Douglas County. Oh. But when we look at our cases, it is very interesting. Over the last 3 weeks, we have seen a constant low level. It's not going down any further, it's not rising. So we had 87 cases last week, the week before we had 88, the week before we had 86. So you are seeing, I'm wondering if we see kind of this endemic level at this time, where we are just hopefully not going to rise in cases, but potentially also are not going to decrease over the summer. Our testing is still, last week we did 1,322 tests. That's 100 tests less than the week before, but still, people are going in for tests. Our positivity rate is 2.5%, and we always said it needs to be below 5%, so that's really a good measure. Hospitalization is the same. It also seems like we have reached just an endemic level. So we had 17 COVID patients in the hospitals last evening, and 3 of them in the ICU and 4 of them on ventilators. That's 17. The night before it was 20, the night before it was 23, then it was 19, then it was 18. So you can kind of see that's the number of hospitalizations we have. One of the good measures, I'm glad to say, is we have had 1 death in June. And that is really good. I'm sure there are going to be death certificates coming in late that hopefully we will get. But at this time, and the individual was non-vaccinated. Again, a lesson for all. You have seen our report yesterday. We have found the first Delta variant, or also called the Indian variant, in Douglas County. In the state of Nebraska, we already had 31 of them, so it wasn't a surprise, really, that we were going to have one in Douglas County. What's a little bit disturbing is this individual has not traveled, and so we are wondering and doing investigations today to actually follow up with the individuals and see what the potential exposure could be. When we talk about vaccination, total doses administered in Douglas County are now 624,266. So just imagine, that takes a lot of work from our healthcare provider and our pharmacists all across the county. To DC residents only, we have administered more than 534,424 vaccines. We have 288,379 residents of Douglas County who are fully vaccinated at this time, meaning they have received 2 doses, they have waited 2 weeks thereafter. So that's 47.6% of our total population. My hope is we are going to be at 50% when I retire. So I said to my staff, we counted yesterday, how many more doses does that mean? And are we going to achieve that? So it means potentially more than 1,255 doses a day. It's a lot, but I told them we are going to go for it. What is interesting is you also heard the national goal is that 70% of our adult population has received at least 1 dose, and we are at 65.7%. Also, again, not sure that we are going to be there by the 4th of July. What is nice for me to look at the results is that now we have 50% of the 16 to 34-year-old, that younger population, that have received at least 1 dose. That went very quick. I think parents were really eager to get their children vaccinated, and so therefore that young age group is getting vaccinated. We still have a disparity in our races. And the highest population is in our Asian refugee population. They are actually 53.7% of those eligible have been receiving at least 1 dose. Whites, 51%. Native Americans are number 3 at 43.1%. Hispanics at 40.2%. And African Americans at 31.7%. Really outreaching in those communities, but it takes a lot of work now because those people who have been holding out until now, they have a lot of questions. So I just give you an example. Over this weekend on Saturday, we had 5 pop-up clinics. And one of them, now the call goes out to healthcare providers if they want to come to those sites, because we are finding out people have questions and who do they trust more than their healthcare provider. So we had one infectious disease doc at one of our pop-up clinic. He talked to an individual for 2 hours, just answering questions that the person had. They had a lot of questions and they were not going to get vaccinated. And at the end, when we were closing up the pop-up site, he came over and he says, I think I have all my questions answered now. I'm ready for a vaccine. Wow. And in our book, that's fabulous. Those questions need to be answered that people have. So just to share with you a little bit, this week, yesterday, we were at 6 different sites with our vans, very colorful vans, and we have tents that go up in front of it. Today, also, we are at 6 different sites, plus we have 35th and L Street, our site, open. Tomorrow, again, at different sites. And when you look at what are these sites, we are going to be in 19 OPS schools and 9 Millard schools. And also this week, we're going to do all the metropolitan community campuses, from Elkhorn to north to south, all 6 facilities. Because these schools are so interested that they do not want to have disruptions when fall comes. And they calculate back and they say, our individuals really need to get vaccinated now so that they are fully vaccinated when fall starts. A lot of vaccine now is going to go to healthcare provider. I just saw my nurses when I left. I said, where are you going? They said, we are going to Village pediatric clinics with vaccine because they are vaccinating out there now too. So a lot of collaboration in our community. I just want to tell you how proud I am of this community. Everybody has really worked well together with the pharmacies. They still have vaccines, and you see them advertised all over. So there is not a lack of opportunity, but there may still be questions that people have. Why should I get the vaccine? And that is now really where our focus needs to be. So that's kind of my report for you today. Any questions that you may have?
Thank you, Dr. Poor. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. And good progress. I hope that you get to the 50% that you're shooting for. The overall vaccination percentage for our entire population, I think I heard you say it was 47.6 right now. But if we break that down, I think the over 65 cohort is probably leading the pack in terms of vaccinations. What's
Yes,
that number, if you know?
You are right, and I have the data actually with me. Above 65 years of age, 96.1 have received one dose, and 91.3 are fully vaccinated.
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing you.
91.3 are fully vaccinated, and 96.1 have received at least one dose.
That's great. I heard coming over here, there was a report on public radio that the younger folks really trail in terms of percentages of vaccinations. I'm talking about under 40 or maybe even under 18. Do you have a breakout on those cohorts?
I do, and that is the good news. So 16 to 19 years old, 50.2% have received one dose, and 20 to 34, also 50.5% have received one dose. And then, of course, from then on, when you go over onto the older groups, you see an increase in vaccination.
So do we have a way to maybe target that population, those younger folks, to try to get them to step up and get vaccinated?
That's why we are going to places where they are. We were at the College World Series, Taste of North Omaha. Really, where could you find these young people? Probably downtown now at College of World Series and enjoying themselves. We were at the swim trial too, in between those two. So I think that is the best way to go. That is best practice at this time. Plus then going to Metro Community College campuses for individuals who have enrolled or are planning to enroll. Cinco de Mayo, again, young people meddle around in those areas. So, it's not 1,000 anymore that we are vaccinating at these clinics. My goal is, I told my staff yesterday, I said, my goal is you vaccinate at least 20 in every of these clinics. And these clinics, pop-up clinics, are for 3 hours sometimes, so they are a limited amount of time. And then we still have the ongoing clinics. We saw Friday again in our standing clinic at the health department. Every Friday, people can walk in and get vaccinated. There were more than 100 people that we saw that day. So, every little bit is good.
Right. So if I heard you correctly, the ethnic racial breakout is quite a disparity between, say, the Asian and white communities and the Hispanic and Black communities. Did I hear you correctly that the Asians are at like 53.7 and whites are 51%? Hispanics are at 40.2 and the Blacks are at 31.7?
Yeah.
31.7?
Yes.
So a more than 20% disparity in that range.
Mm-hmm. More than 20% difference, yes. And with all the focus that we have had with the churches, and we had again a drive-through at Salem Church about 2 weeks ago. So, but we need to keep on going.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Maureen Boyle?
Thanks again for the great report. A couple things. You mentioned that now it seems that people really need information from their doctors to be reassured that this vaccine is something for them. Is there any strategy, or do you have any thoughts on how to get the healthcare systems involved so that they know this and then they reach out to those patients?
So we actually have a call out to all of the healthcare systems now at this time to ask for volunteers, but also ask them if they are interested to vaccinate in their own clinics. So both of them need to work. And some of them actually want us to do a pop-up clinic in front of their clinic. Yeah. But again, it is to call out to their patients so that they can inform them, come here, and if you have questions, we can answer them. So.
See, and then each health system would probably be the ones to figure out how to best reach those targeted populations.
Absolutely. And and some health systems are a little bit further ahead than others, I would say.
Yeah, okay, good. And then do you know any information on the demographics of those folks that are hospitalized at this time?
I did ask again specifically, and they are saying it's all over. It's all age ranges. A little bit different from what we are hearing on the national news, because on the national news you are hearing that mostly young people are hospitalized, and so I asked a specific question because I'm interested in this, and they say no, we are seeing across the ages.
I see. So that kind of leans to it being more of an endemic, like you're talking about, as opposed to the pandemic. So that's a good thing. The other thing, too, is you mentioned that going to Metro and some of the other high schools and all that, thoughts about going to UNO, Creighton, the private high schools. Are there plans for that, too?
Correct. So the private high schools, they are all included. We meet with the superintendents on a weekly basis, and they are saying they are just referring their students to some of the Millard and OPS schools.
Okay. Good.
And so it's interesting, actually. Millard has a little test, a little competition going on. Which school is going to have the highest amount of students vaccinated?
That's good. That's great. And then the last thing, I'm going to ask you to put your wizard hat on and predict, with the variants kind of just starting to come through, and with the College World Series, the Olympic trials, downtown is just hopping right now. Can you predict 2 weeks from now, when people start to feel symptoms, do you think we're going to see a mini surge? Any thoughts on that?
I'm holding my breath for it, like you. I hope we are not going to see a surge, but I would expect we may see a slight surge.
Okay. All right. That's all.
I hope I'm not right.
I hope you're wrong, too. All right. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Just following up on what we discussed earlier about this huge disparity between, say, the white population and the black population, a 20% disparity in vaccination rates. Why is that?
If I would know the answer, I would probably address it. We do not know. I mean, we are going out again. We have a few African-American churches who are now reaching out again and are saying, can you come and do a pop-up site? We have this event at the church. So it's not for lack of trying. And Charles True is doing a fabulous job in the community too. And we went to Omaha Housing Authority, to all the different towers and so on. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Dr. Poor, when you were naming off the schools that you had gone to, have you contacted the DC West out in the western? Okay.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. DC West, Elkhorn,
Yep.
they all want to bring everybody
Bennington.
to Millard.
Okay.
And Elkhorn, we are at the Metro campus in Elkhorn.
Right.
Twice, actually. Yesterday and next Monday.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
And everybody can go to those sites. You don't need to be a student from a certain school or go to Metro. It's
Right.
for the community. Everybody can go.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? Very good. Thank you, Dr. Poor. We have a public hearing. It is our proposed 1 and 6 year highway plan for 2022 to 2027. Action can be taken June 29th on this. And with us today is Dan Kudelek. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have a minute.
Madam Chair, the public hearing's open.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, let's see can I see it? Oh, yeah. Zoom in, you can zoom in. That's good, I can move it a little, can I? All right. We're here this morning. The state law requires that all counties, villages, and municipalities file a 1 and 6 year plan annually and to hold a public meeting in regard to that plan. Our plan, again, is very aggressive. I'm sure you're aware of all the development that's going on in the county. There's just multiple developments that are being built as we speak. Counted in this particular fiscal year, there's 12 in our jurisdiction that we're dealing with. And we do cost share in the road improvements with those developers because we feel there is a public benefit to move the traffic through these areas as safely as possible. Most of these improvements are just widening the existing road to allow for left turn lanes and traffic signals and things of that nature for the most part. What I'd like to do is just point out to you some of the locations. You can see by the map, there's a lot of action up in this part of the county. It's on State Street, Ida Street, 168th Street. Also, down in this area, we'll talk about this one a little bit later. That's our large federal aid project, which is on 180th Street from Dodge to Blondo, which takes up a big portion of the cost of our plan. We show about $60 million worth of work in this fiscal year, of which over half is in this one project. It's about $40 million, so a very large project. The map shows there's so many projects. We show red and green on the map just so you know that we can't physically build them all at the same time and maintain any kind of access in and out of the neighborhood. So we have split it up. The red projects will be built this calendar year, and the green projects will be built next calendar year in 22. The fiscal year, as you all know, runs from July 1 to June 30th, so that gets a little confusing. We kind of, calendar years and fiscal years don't line up exactly, so it's a little hard to grasp that sometimes in your mind. Also in this current year, for your information, as you might recall, we had an emergency bridge collapse on 36th and Ponca Road. We hired a consultant, and we have been doing our due diligence, getting the permits that are required from various agencies, and we will be likely buying a little bit of right-of-way here in the very near future. But we do plan to construct a bridge. We're going to replace that pipe with a bridge for a lot of reasons. Cost was one. It's feasible, and also it's less environmentally impactful to the creek in that area. So a bridge was decided to be built. We hope to take bids this fall and have it open to the traffic, the public traffic in that area this year yet. So that is our goal, and there's no reason we cannot make that. As part of that project, you might find of interest,
Congresswoman, I think there's a lot of words I can think of to describe.
All right. We did get a little cost participation from the NRD folks in regard to a erosion control type program that we're going to include with this structure. So that was voted on favorably by the board, the NRD board. We also, in our plan, it doesn't really show, include some bridges out in western Douglas County. As you may be aware, we've been very aggressively replacing these old, functionally obsolete and structurally deficient bridges for the last numbers of years. And we've been trying to put out about 2 of them every year, and we will do that again this year. They are served our public well. They were built back in the 20s and earlier than that even, but their time has come, and we're replacing those systematically. So,
Folks on Zoom, could you please mute yourselves? Thank you.
It's not going so well?
I hope not. I hope not. Thank you, Commissioner. We also do maintenance projects that are going on again this year, like always, overlays, asphalt overlays, and chip seals, and micro paving, things of that nature that are somewhat boring to the public, but they're very important to the life of the road system for Douglas County, and we're very proud of that. And it shows. You know, if you drive around Douglas County roads, you'll see that they're in pretty good shape compared to other counties, and we're one big reason for that is these maintenance projects that we've been doing for decades out at our office. So with that, I guess I'd just say some of the future projects you might be interested in that are not going to be constructed this year, but they're in the process of being discussed and planned are going to be selecting a consultant here shortly to start the design on the last mile of Q Street from 192nd to 204th through the ASEP, Arterial Street Improvement Program monies. We'll pay for that entirely. It's very much needed. There's numbers of developments, huge developments are proposed out there, and we'll be grading them if they aren't already. I think they are started it already, so we have to get going on that, and that was the site that was selected. So you'll see and hear more about that as time goes on. We are also looking at the bridge over the Elkhorn River. It's kind of reached its life expectancy, and the salt has gotten to it a little bit, so we're looking at replacing that structure sometime in the future, and we've been working with MAPA to come up with some federal aid, hopefully, to help us out, because that'll be a multi-million-dollar undertaking. But we need to approach that and address it. 168th and State. If Commissioner Mike Boyle was here, he would be asking me about that, Commissioner. It's the old State Street jump, it's referred to. It's been a very dangerous intersection for decades. We are now developing in that area aggressively. All 4 corners are underdeveloped of one form of another. So we'll be doing a cost share with that improvement. And we've had discussions with all the developers and their attorneys, and we're working towards a interlocal agreement to come up with the funds for that, because that's a very expensive project also. So, but anyway, that's, I think, good news. It's time. That area, like I was showing on the map, has just exploded with development, so we're going to address that. With that, Karen, I'm going to show you a little drone flight over our 180th Street project. It's what we're looking at here is the bridge from the south looking north over the Old Lincoln Highway and the railroad tracks. It's obviously twin structures. They're about 900 feet long. And the truck you're seeing is the pumper truck pumping concrete up to the deck from down below in order to pour the decks. It's kind of an interesting operation. A lot of trucks of concrete had to come in and unload, and then they pump it up to the surface of the bridge. So this actual picture is a little outdated. They got the decks completely poured now, and so we're getting closer and closer to completing that particular part of the project. Enter. Uh-oh. There you go, technology. Not working.
If Commissioner Boyle's here, he would ask if you needed his help.
I thought about not even trying this, Commissioner. But anyway, you saw the bridge. The other shots are of Blondo Street.
I think the folks on Zoom can't see this, but you can continue for the
All right.
commissioners.
That's another shot of the bridge looking from, I think it's looking from the east to the west. Oh, it's on automatic pilot
Oh,
now,
there
I
you go.
think. This is Blondo Street looking east. A new bridge on Blondo Street is done, and the pavement actually is in now. Now this is looking at Blondo Street Bridge looking to the west. There's a little alignment shift. You can kind of see the change there, curvilinear road. This is another bridge that's up closer to Maple Street and a creek that we had to stay out of because of the waters of the U.S. The 4-lane road will go through that area. And it's about a quarter-mile south of Maple.
Oh, okay.
On 180th Street. And this is just another shot of Blondo Street, so, and we start from the beginning. So you could shut that off, Karen. Thank you. I guess, for the record, there's about $60 million worth of work in fiscal year '22, of which about $10 million of it is Douglas County's share, and the remainder is federal money or other folks that are participating. So with that, I guess I'll close my presentation and be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dan, thanks for the presentation. I know it's not necessarily your purview, but I was hoping you could maybe give us a little bit of insight. Can you speak generally, I realize Highway 92 and the 275 split out to 264th Street is a state function.
Right.
But I've been out there quite a bit, and I know it's a state highway, but there are at least 5 county roads that feed right into that highway between the 275 split and 264th, or heading down to Two Rivers, right? That is a dangerous section of road. I mean, the traffic out there is unbelievable. And I just thought you might be able to give us an idea of a strategic plan that either the state might have or that they've shared with you that might mitigate some of that danger. I mean, and I'm sure we can get EMS to talk about and Life Flight and everything else, talk about the times that they have to go out there to actually maneuver their way around accidents.
Well, it is a state project. I do know they have preliminary plans on board that will show you what they're proposing to do. And I know it's in their program. It's just a matter of funding and the prioritization of that project in District 2 to get it to construction. So it is moving forward. We'd have to discuss with NDOT exactly what their schedule is. And actually, when we did an improvement out there a few years ago, we coordinated it with the plans that they had available for us to look at, so we wouldn't be conflicting and having them tear out what we put in. So it's a large project, starting at, Elkhorn basically, and actually about Elkhorn and going out west, so it's a big project. But
Okay, yeah, I just thought you could provide some insight. I know it's not on your
and the other,
plan.
that just reminded me, Q Street, we've had some accidents in western Q Street, west of the Elkhorn River. We do have a project in our plan to do some widening and shouldering, from the Elkhorn River west to Highway 92. And we want to be able to put in some rumble stripes, they call them, rumble strips rather, on the edge lines, that type of thing. We did do the center lines with a rumble strip, and that is a mechanism that if somebody would be distracted and crosses the center line, it hopefully will wake them up to get back into the lane they're supposed to be in. So, it's a lot of trucks, a lot of truck traffic out in that part of the county is part of the problem, and people are, concerned about that, and we're getting input from the public. We also are looking at roundabouts on Q Street at certain locations that make sense, and we're going to actually do a study, a feasibility study, concept study, just to see how they might fit in on Q Street and see what impact they would have and make a decision. So we're aware of that. I know the state has a project on the highway, but I just don't know their schedule.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Commissioner Maureen Boyle?
Yeah, just a quick question. Where does the data come from, and what resources are used to determine which projects are going to be placed in the plan?
Well, it's internal information we are aware of. Traffic counts, accidents, developments drive a lot of our projects. We, like I mentioned earlier, enter into interlocal agreements. So the information is more so driven by traffic counts, literally, and developments, really. And the ASAP money is a joint venture between Omaha, Douglas County, and a development committee. And we meet every few years and make decisions where to spend that ASAP money.
I was just curious. Thanks.
Yep.
All right. Dan, thanks for mentioning the Q Street. That was going to be my question. But I also have to give you guys kudos, as well as the sheriff's office, for responding to the folks out there. It got better for a little bit, and it's starting to get bad again. And I think, again, it's just because of the timing of the construction season that's starting and the trucks that are going through that area. But Bob and I drive that a lot just to test it, and it's the traffic is picked up again. And so long term, though, we would have to work with the state of Nebraska to actually do any like real big major change on that stretch. Well, 2 stretches actually, but right?
Yes, correct. Yeah,
Okay.
they have their own program.
We may want to just have a conversation with them to see what their plans, if any, are for that area.
Sure.
Again, the development out there has, sprung up, and some's been there for quite a while, but it's almost like the 168th Jump Street area, where there's just this ongoing accidents that happen in that area. And again, it's not a jump this time, it's the curve this time.
Yeah.
And those trucks and people speeding. We've had traffic studies, 2 different ones out there, which again, appreciate what you guys have done to be responsive to that, but I think that needs some further attention as well.
Yeah, we're aware of that. Signs can only do so much.
Right.
You put up signs and people think that's the solution. It really isn't.
Right.
So
Well,
we're
and
hoping.
even law enforcement. I mean, you have law enforcement out there, and everybody is good and obeys the rules, and then once law enforcement leaves, it goes right back, and we can't expect them to, station somebody out there the entire time. I think that those lines you did put in,
the rumble stripes.
Rumble stripes. Those have helped.
Yeah.
But again, it's just a huge problem with that area. Okay. Any other questions or comments? But again, thanks for all the good work and responsiveness of your office out in especially the western part of the county.
Well, thank you. This is the public hearing, and you vote on this matter next week, I understand.
Next week, yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak during the public hearing? All right. Teresa, can I close the public hearing today, or do I have to wait till the 29th to close it? We can vote on it next week.
I don't specifically recall what we did last time. Why don't you leave it open, and I'll take a look at what we did last time. We can always close it
Close
next
it
week. Yeah,
next week.
yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, with that, we will leave the public hearing open, and we will then take it up again next week for action. Next, we'll move to the committee reports. We have the Finance Committee's budget report as presented. Any, okay. Next, we have Community Services. There's a discussion/action on our 2021-22 Visitor Improvement Fund allocation. Recommendations submitted by the Visitors Promotion Council. And Catherine Hall, did you want to give a briefing on this? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Maureen Boyle, did you have something before I turn it to Catherine?
Yeah, just basically, this was a very intense process, and I want to thank the committee for doing this. Emiliano Lerda was the chair of this. The monies that came in this time around from the Visitor Improvement Fund was dramatically less than what's been seen in the past. So we all know that about everybody was cut significantly. So we're hoping that as things are getting better and more visitors are coming to town, and that money is coming in, that in the future we'll be able to get folks what they need in order to continue to provide great services to the community. So with that, I want to turn it over to Catherine Hall, who helped steer that and coordinate that from our standpoint.
Catherine, I almost forgot because you're Diane today, but yeah, go ahead. There you go.
Thanks, Commissioners. I don't have much to add. I defer to the VPC Chair, Emiliano Lerda, who's attending via Zoom. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Emiliano Lerda, and I serve as the chair of the Visitor Promotion Council. And as I was mentioned earlier, it was the most difficult year that we had to deal with significant cuts. Basically, these are effects from the COVID pandemic that forced us to have to cut a lot of requests. And we're really optimistic about the future as we see the recovery of the industry, and the future hopefully will help us bring back to normal levels and the appropriate levels of funding to those that receive support from the county. In front of you, you have a recommendation from the Visitor Promotion Council for nearly $2 million of LB's 262 Visitor Improvement Funds to fund 66 grant applications. We reviewed more than $6 million in requests from 69 applicants. Again, this was a very difficult year, and I want to say thank you for the guidance and support that we received, and it was provided by the county attorney's office and the commissioner's staff throughout the VPC application process. Without any additional comments, I also should mention this year we also welcomed to the Visitor Promotion Council our new member Jay Lund, who contributed, and it was a great perspective to have at the council. With that, I yield for questions or comments.
Are there any? Thank you, Emiliano. Commissioner P.J. Morgan.
Thank you, Amelia. Let me ask a couple of questions. I think the money right now stands at about $2 million. Commissioner Friend and I have been discussing that matter. Am I accurate on my number? I think is what Catherine Hall, I think, has been working on that. My hope is that there will be some additional funds. I think the committee's working and looking at what we're getting as far as from the federal monies that will be coming, and that's the hope, and I know Mary Ann's working hard on that too. Am I accurate on that statement, Mary Ann?
We'll have, conversations with the board on what we want to use the funds on. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So I'd say stay tuned, and hopefully that's going to be in the next few weeks.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we are working diligently and understand
the seriousness of what has transpired. And thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. I really appreciate the support of everybody, and it really was very heavy lifting this year, and it was difficult to make those decisions. But again, I am excited about the future, and I believe we have a bright future ahead of us.
All right, any other questions or comments? We can take action today on this. And, all right, any further questions or comments? I would ask that the College World Series one be pulled and voted on separately, because I'm on that board.
Motion to approve with exclusion of the College World Series.
Okay, please vote.
Commissioner Marine Boyle?
Yes.
Commissioner Mike Boyle, some connectivity issues. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Motion.
Motion to approve the College World Series.
Is there a second? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
Commissioner Marine Boyle?
Yes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Abstain.
Okay, motion passes. 5 commissioners voting yes, Commissioner Borgeson abstaining.
All right, thank you for being with us this morning. Next.
Thank you.
Is our weekly personnel report under the Human Resources Committee as presented. And nothing under legislation at this time. We do have need for an executive session for litigation. Contract litigation? Negotiations, okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Maureen Boyle to go into executive session. Please vote.
Commissioner Marine Boyle?
Yes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh? Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes, and
Oh.
we can just go back here today behind her.
Okay, great. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.